Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Ask TotalBiscuit Anything. This is a series based on the AMA that was done over on r/CynicalBrit on the 29th of September 2012. You want to know what's going on in the background? It's Command & Conquer Generals, or more accurately, it's me being absolutely crushed at Command & Conquer Generals. This is hard mode Generals Challenge with the Shockwave mod, which is unbelievably difficult, so I'm still learning the ropes again. Great fun game. Actually works properly with Windows 7 now if you get the Ultimate Collection, which is unfortunately an Origin exclusive, so that might piss off a lot of people. I also had to no-CD crack the damn thing, a game that I legitimately own, in order to get mods working properly with it, because of the way they've designed the launcher. Ugh. But at least it works properly with Windows 7, and it's rock-solid stable, so after a couple of modifications to make it widescreen and things like that, things seem to work quite well. First question from Covered in Bees. How have your issues with stress been affected since moving to the States? Well, the stress thing's not as bad as it once was, and there's days where I don't actually even have to take anti-allergy meds. For those who don't know, I have chronic stress-induced urticaria, and I've had it for the past year and a half, and it is essentially allergies that are stress-induced. Every day, if I don't take antihistamine, what will generally happen is I will start to get kind of a tingling sensation at the top of my arms, and eventually, after a few hours, I will start to get irritated. Hives will pop up in some situations. If it's really, really bad, I often get them on my upper arms and my back, and I will get red rashes as well. And that is dealt with via the use of allergy meds. Now, we did look for something environmental. There doesn't appear to be anything environmental. We've been through pretty much everything, and no, I'm not actually allergic to anything other than the fact that I get really, really stressed, and, you know, I work a high-stress job. Some people think it's not a high-stress job, but it kind of does. I mean, you don't have a lot of job security in the YouTube scene. A few mistakes and you can lose your audience, and then, of course, you'll lose your job. Not to mention the inherent instability of the growing scene of online media. Who knows where the hell that's going? So that in itself is quite stressful. You don't get paid the same amount every month, so it's a constant balancing of the finances in the books. And I think the most important thing is you're exposing yourself to hundreds of thousands of people online that all have opinions that they're willing to throw in your general direction. So it's like being shouted at by a crowd every time you open Twitter or YouTube or the email box or Facebook or anything like that. And some people deal with it really well and some people don't. And I think I'm probably one of those people that doesn't. It's unquestionably gotten better though. I'm in a situation now where my time is better managed. I'm in a situation where, for the most part, I don't pay as much attention to YouTube comments or anything like that, so I tend to stay away from the YouTube comments section, and that helps a great deal. And with a proper schedule, proper organization, and proper staff support, I'm able to at least lower my stress levels quite a bit. But it does still occur, unfortunately, and it's probably not going away anytime soon. But thankfully, I've got those, so everything is just fine. One of those a day, and there are no problems. This one from The One and Anger. Your favorite Swedish metal band? Well, that's probably Dark Tranquillity. So for many years now, I've been quite the fan of the Gothenburg style of melodic death metal. Usually trying to stick to the more old school style of things, because I find that later on, particularly in recent albums, a lot of bands have gone more for the sort of whiny aspect of it and put an overemphasis on melodic vocals, when in reality, the idea of melodic death metal is not necessarily to have melodic vocals, although you can put them in every now and again when it sounds reasonable. It's more often than not to have aspects of death metal, but have more melodic guitar harmonies, the use of synths and keyboards, for instance, and it comes out with some really fantastic riffs as a direct result. I do love the combination of synth and double guitar. I think that's absolutely fantastic. You can get a really heavy sound that's also got a fantastic amount of clarity to it, as well as a great melody and riff. So it's a genre that I very much appreciate. Dark Tranquillity was definitely one of the first bands to do it, but I would say that the genre was probably founded by At the Gates. Though we definitely shouldn't forget Carcass, that started off playing more of a grindcore style, but with Heartwork in 1993, they changed their style significantly. It's interesting to listen to the really early melodic death metal stuff because it's very much in this transitionary period. I think if you listen to MDM now over the last few years, then you'll probably notice a lot of very similar themes, and the style has cemented itself. But back then, it was bands trying to balance the idea of straight-up death metal, which has extremely brutal lyrics. It's pretty much all harsh, guttural death growls, and also the idea that death metal guitar was often very fast. It was often played without regard to harmony. It was a very discordant style of things, and it's pretty harsh on the ears for a lot of people. Whereas when the transition through to melodic death metal came in, they tried to have a similar degree of speed, at least some bands did, and keep some of the brutality, but give a more melodic focus to the actual guitar sounds. And they had this whole dueling guitars thing, which could be considered to be part of the new wave of British heavy metal back in the 80s. So yeah, it's a pretty complex genre. I am certainly a fan of it. The bands that I enjoy in there, I enjoy old school In Flames. I stopped liking In Flames after Reroute. I think Soundtrack to Your Escape was an absolutely disgraceful thing. Sounds of a Playground Fading, which is their latest album, oh god, it's been so hard to watch a band that used to be one of my favorites just absolutely collapse into this horrible hole of whiny nonsense. And actually, it could arguably be the fault of Anders, who happens to be the lead vocalist of that particular band, because he had a side project back in the day called Passenger. Now, as far as I'm aware, they only ever released one album. They definitely weren't melodic death metal. They could be considered to be alternative metal. They were okay. I mean, I didn't necessarily hate them. I quite liked some of the tracks on there, but I really didn't think that it was going to go anywhere. And, well, they've been on hiatus since 2004, so one assumes that, quite frankly, there isn't all that much going on with it. I think what I dislike about Passenger is quite similar to what I dislike about New In Flames material, is the fact that Anders' vocals are just too whiny. Also, why on earth do you call a song Borders and Shading? That's an option Microsoft Word. What the... I don't even know. They have gone in a very strange direction. I really don't like it. Soilwork is another band I really like. They have done, for the most part, pretty well. They have a couple of albums which are really not very good. I mean, Stabbing the Drama is just horrendous, and I was very, very worried with Stabbing the Drama that they were going in the direction of In Flames, but if you listen to the Panic broadcast, it is a way better album. It is absolutely fantastic. It's got the riffs, it's got the synth parts, and it's got the vocals, and it's just right. It sounds wonderful. It's probably one of my favorite albums from them after the Chain Heart Machine and Natural Born Chaos. There's definitely a few other bands that I should mention that are Swedish. I mean, Sweden has some just absolutely phenomenal stuff. How can we forget Amon Amarth? We certainly shouldn't, because they're absolutely awesome. Genre-wise, I think you could probably still say they're melodic death metal, although most people seem to consider them Viking metal at this point, which you can't really blame them for. I mean, for God's sake, they have songs like Twilight of the Thunder God, The Pursuit of Vikings, Wrath of the Norsemen, and so on and so forth. It's really quite fantastic. They're one of my favorite live bands. They have just some absolutely crushing riffs, and they're really enthusiastic for the crowd. Meshuggah, they're pretty good, certainly if you like reverse headbanging, which has a tendency to happen. I saw them live a couple of years ago, and because they write songs in very weird time signatures and also like to change time signature at random throughout the song, it confuses anyone that doesn't know the song off by heart. You're trying to headbang to that, and then suddenly it's like, is this in 13/8 now? It's like, yes, it is. Arch Enemy used to be pretty good, but they really aren't anymore. If I'm honest, I haven't had the chance to listen to recent material. I think the last material I heard from them was Doomsday Machine, and it was just unbelievably awful. I don't mind the lead vocalist. She's great. That's absolutely fine. I mean, in comparison to the old vocalist, I would say that it's a hell of a lot better. But unfortunately, it seems like they can't write a good song anymore, which kind of saddens me. Evergrey is another band I really like. Not as heavy, certainly, as some of the bands that I just mentioned, but they do a pretty nice progressive style, and for the most part, the material's pretty good. Monday Morning Apocalypse was just a complete mess. I mean, and once again, it was far too whiny. They didn't have the riffs, and they are a band that's really, really loud live, and they can put on some absolutely awesome atmospheric stuff, but that was not present on that album. Glorious Collision is a hell of a lot better in my opinion. And of course, who could forget Swedish power metal in the form of bands like Sabaton, who are just phenomenal in my opinion, absolutely wonderful. Hammerfall for the cheese. I don't even like Hammerfall on record, actually. I really don't. I think they're middle of the road, honestly, but when it comes to their live material, that's great. They're probably in my top 3 power metal bands that I've seen live. I think they're beaten out by Blind Guardian and Rhapsody of Fire, honestly. I would say Blind Guardian was probably the best power metal band I've ever seen live. The unbelievable competence of the lead vocalist when it comes to live material, and Rhapsody are just flat out epic in pretty much every respect. But they are not Swedish. No, indeed they are not. Rhapsody is Italian, if I recall correctly, and Blind Guardian is German. Anyway, I have a suggestion. If you do want to check out some of the stuff that I used to play back on Blue Please in Season 4, which has a wide variety of different genres of metal and things like that, someone made a Spotify playlist a long time ago. I'm going to put it in the description below this video, so go and check out the Spotify playlist if you want to be exposed to some new music. I haven't really had the time to listen to a lot of metal lately, but I'm still a huge fan of it, and hopefully you might be able to find a few bands that you like if you're just trying to get into the genre. Coming in from the very classily named Vaginas Are Awesome, do you have any future plans to change the TGS podcast in any significant way? Things such as adding new topics or adding an interactive element with viewers. Also, on a stupider level, did you and Jesse hug when you first visited him? God, why do you even ask that? I think we did, actually, if I remember correctly. Anyway, the format works just fine, I think. It's kept current due to new releases, what we've been playing in news, so it's not like the show will really ever get old. My only concern is whether or not it's still wise to bring guests on. It's interesting to say that because this is the reply that I gave 9 days ago to this AMA before we had Felicia Day on, who I think was definitely one of the best guests we've ever had, but it still showcases a problem. When you have a very talky guest on a 4-man podcast, it's very difficult to balance. If I'm acting as the anchor and the host, then obviously I'm going to be talking quite a lot, especially since I play more games than the other hosts and I generally have more in-depth knowledge on certain subjects, although not all of them. You'll notice me go very quiet when people are talking about Guild Wars or Minecraft or anything like that because I just haven't really had the chance to play them at all. But there is still a problem with the guest format. How do you balance it? If you look at the Felicia Day show, then you will notice the person that talks the least, at least after the first few minutes, is actually Jesse. And as a result, you might as well just have a 3-person podcast. And the problem is, I really like the 3-person dynamic between me, Jesse, and Dodger. I think that's a really good balance. But I also like bringing guests on. So it's like, how do I actually deal with that? How do I improve the format? Most of the time, guests are either too quiet or they just don't fit into the format very well at all. Sometimes we get guests that are very much mono gamers and they don't have a lot of background knowledge. I would say that when we brought Steven Plays on, he did a really good job when he was just a Let's Play channel. But when we bring on other guys that maybe they just focus on one particular game, maybe they're a Minecraft commentator, or maybe they just play Mario games or something like that, if you ask them a lot about different things, especially current stuff, then you'll often find them drawing a blank, which is a bit tricky to deal with because you've got to go try and kind of lead them into the questions and give them a chance to talk, which feels a bit more contrived. They don't really get involved in the discussion. Plus, it's really hard to break the 3-pillar dynamic. If you just come out of the show for the first time and there's us that have been on a show together like 28 times already, and we're already friends, then how do you break into that circle without thinking that you're the 4th, 5th, or indeed 3rd wheel? The 4th wheel, wow, yes. You're the 4th wheel, you're the linchpin of the podcast, you're not a reliant Robin, congratulations. I think I'm kind of tempted not to take in random guests and have kind of a rotating 4th pillar from the people that we know will do a good show with us. People like Josh from Indie Static, JonTron did a really good job, Mindflame did a really good job, and there's a few other hosts that I think would work pretty well. But then again, that throws away the possibility of perhaps finding a new awesome show host that we can have on and just discovering that as a result of the rotating cast. So it's difficult to say. Format-wise, I think it's fine. I mean, it really is just up to me to keep the podcast on track. I think when I'm not on the show, it is abundantly clear. And I've spoken out kind of a long time ago, really. People know me right now for speaking out against people that do nothing but terrible Let's Plays. But back in the day, I used to speak out against people that made terrible podcasts. And when it came down to a bunch of disorganized drivel and people just kind of train wrecking the show, I used to hate that, and I still do. So I have to try and keep the reins on the podcast, and whenever I'm not there, the reins come off the podcast, and, well, the horses run rampant and trample small children. It's horrible. So I just think I need to be more careful when it comes to keeping the show on track and imposing my will to make sure that happens. I think the last few podcasts have been really, really good about avoiding train wrecks and still keeping a good balance of good informative content and discussion versus funny stuff. And if we can keep that up, then the show will continue to do really well. As regards to user interaction, I don't really want to do that because we broadcast live and then the VOD goes up 2 days later. It would be really weird to try and do viewer interaction with people that are only watching live. And honestly, the live thing is very much a privilege at the moment. It was special permission from the Game Station because in reality, it's their content. So it should be on their channel. We named it the Game Station Podcast for a reason. We wanted to produce content that was designed for that channel. So being able to do it outside of the channel is very much a blessing and something that could potentially not continue if something were to go horribly wrong. So yeah, I'd rather focus on the VOD because I think that's the proper way to watch it rather than the live stream. Okay, one final question before we wrap this up. This is from Gulikig. Any plans for another video with Simon and Lewis? Well, the thing about Simon and Lewis is they're really, really busy. They run their own company from their own offices now, and they have an entire network within a network. They've got a bunch of Yogscast channels that they're working to cross-promote between, which is really awesome. Now, they keep saying we should do something together, but it never ends up coming about because we're all so busy. I'm trying to cover the latest new releases all the time. They have a bunch of internal stuff they're dealing with. They have successful series and shows, as well as their other partners that they're trying to build up. So it's really difficult to do, especially when I've moved the channel, I think, away from Let's Play content over the last 6 months. The Magica series with Yogscast, I think, was a really good one that we did. It's still really easy, silly, garbage content, but I don't think it's that bad for a channel to have some of it, and I would never condemn a channel that just has a little bit of bad content every now and again. Even some of the most serious and well-organized channels, like, say, Rooster Teeth. I know it's weird to call them serious, but they put out a hell of a lot of really well-produced content. It's very hard to argue with Rooster Teeth's quality. It's well-edited, it's well-commentated, and it's generally awesome. Even they do some Let's Play stuff. That's okay. That's fine. It's not bad to have a little bit of Let's Play content, a little bit of reality TV, a little bit of garbage on the channel. It's when your channel gets taken over by it. And that could be a real risk, because if that's the content that's getting you the most views, then it's really tempting just to make more of that. And in fact, some would argue it's your duty to, because you're supposed to make your channel as popular as it can get it. And if that's the way to do it, then surely you should pursue that. It's like the way that Yogscast developed their channel from a Minecraft standpoint is that they were doing WoW stuff and commentary and Let's Play, and they struck gold with Minecraft, so they focus mostly on Minecraft now. And you can definitely see why that is. I think I'm fortunate in that the content that I do gets a lot of views anyway and is still informative. And WTF is hardly a well-produced show. You know, it's reasonably well commentated, it does a lot of different games, but at the end of the day, it's just a live demo. I prefer that show to, say, doing a Let's Play because at least it's providing some kind of a service. You can look at WTF is to find out about new games, you can look at it to find out whether or not a game is worth buying, and you can use it as part of your informational arsenal when it comes to determining whether or not a game is actually worth doing. But I think we'll definitely do something. Honestly, I think it's probably most likely going to be Dungeon Land, because I think the possibility of getting 3 of the Yogscast on and having me as the Dungeon Master could be absolutely hilarious. So I think maybe we do Dungeon Land. We already played it a little bit at the Paradox event in London a while ago, but me as the Dungeon Master plus, say, Simon Lewis and Hannah, or Simon Lewis and Duncan could be really, really good. So I think that is on the cards and will most likely happen once we gain access to that game in beta. Alright folks, that rounds me up for this episode of Ask TotalBiscuit Anything. My name has been TotalBiscuit, and I shall see you next time.